We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. Minister, asked when you and your office were first notified about the 000 crisis, you said, quote, "We were not notified of the catastrophic outage until late afternoon on Friday 19th of September. However, a secret email has revealed the minister's personal office was actually notified 24 hours earlier than what she told the House yesterday. Minister, how can Australians trust 000 to work in an emergency when they cannot even trust you to tell the truth in Parliament?"
Just going to remind, it's an issue that I did raise sort of yesterday. Just moving forward with all questions, if we can just follow the standing orders to make sure the "you" is not used. It's just reflecting on the chair, and I'm sure the leader isn't wanting that to occur, so we'll just ensure that's moving forward for all questions. The Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport has the call.
I thank the Leader for the Opposition for her question. Mr Speaker, all of this information is already in the public domain. I spoke to that at a press conference on the 22nd of September. I spoke about that incorrect information that Optus provided to my office and to the ACMA regulator on the Thursday, 18th of September. That transcript's available on my website if you would like to peruse. That advice that Optus gave to both my office and ACMA on Thursday afternoon was clearly incorrect, it was inaccurate and it was misleading. That is why we have put in place changes that will be further strengthened on 1 November when the new ACMA determination takes effect. It will mean that telcos must immediately share information relating to outages with relevant emergency service organisations, police, fire, ambulance, and the regulator, and people who are relevant. So I've asked, and telcos have agreed, to start that early.
The Leader of the Opposition is on a point of order.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table documents which clearly reveal a notification from Optus to the Minister's office.
Leader of the House. No, leave is not granted. Call to the honour. Order. Order. We're going to bring the House to order. And I'll give the call to the honourable member for Tagney.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. What are the opportunities of acting on climate change? Are there any risk to acting on climate change, and what would not acting mean for Australia's economy? Thank you.
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and the Minister for Energy.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for the question. And he asked about the opportunities of acting on climate change. And those opportunities are there for the country, and they're there for Australia's households and businesses and farmers, Mr Speaker. And Australians are taking up those opportunities every day. And households are taking up that opportunity every day, Mr Speaker. And there is a bit of a milestone to share with the House, because I can tell the House that as of today, 80,005 Australian households have installed a cheaper home battery under the Albanese government's cheaper home battery policy, Mr Speaker. And it's been a while since we've sat, so I will give the House a bit of an update. It remains a regional and suburban story. Australians in regional Australia and the suburbs are taking up the Albanese government's cheaper home batteries policy. I won't go through every state, but in New South Wales we have a new leader. The member for Richmond now has more cheaper home batteries than anybody else, but she's closely followed by the members for Page and the member for Riverina, and then with the member for Gilmore coming in fourth now, Mr Speaker. So right across regional New South Wales, people are embracing the opportunities of net zero. And in Western Australia, Mr Speaker, I also have an update. There's one particular Western Australian member. Everyone's talking about him. He's got a great CV and an even better future. He's widely regarded as one of the Parliament's better-looking members. I refer, of course, to the member for Tagney, Mr Speaker, who has the highest take-up in Western Australia of any member of Parliament when it comes to cheaper home batteries. This is households and businesses and farmers taking up the opportunities. Now, of course, Mr Speaker, farmers come up in this conversation a lot, as they should. And on this side of the House, we believe that farmers who know their land so well and are so expert in creating wealth out of that land should be given the opportunity to seize these opportunities. Every farmer who has a wind farm or a solar farm is paid for having it, Mr Speaker. No wind farm or solar farm is installed in Australia without the consent and full agreement of the landholder, and we know that between now and 2030 it's expected that about $1 billion of payments will be made to farmers for hosting that infrastructure. And between now and 2050, up to $8 billion, Mr Speaker, in payments. Now, I'm asked what risk. Well, if you don't believe in climate change, you can't seize the opportunities. The member for Flynn was asked, have you, as a federal parliamentarian, ever been given empirical scientific evidence that proves climate change? And he said, no, I can assure you it does not exist. This is the alternative government of Australia in 2025. They don't believe in the science of climate change. Well, if you don't believe in climate change, you can't seize the opportunities. He's one of the more moderate members of those opposites, Mr Speaker. But if you don't understand the challenges of modern Australia, you're not fit to be the government of Australia.
Call to the honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. Yesterday, the Minister told the House that the government made no error in the 000 crisis and that it was, quote, the fault of Optus and Optus alone. But today, when the Coalition moved an amendment to double the maximum penalty for a telco company to $20 million per offence, the Albanese government shamefully voted it down. Minister, if Optus and Optus alone is to blame, why did Labor vote against the interests of Australians who just want 000 to work when their lives are on the line?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for the Arts. Sport.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her question. As I noted when these amendments were moved earlier today, we were keen to engage in good faith on potential amendments, but unfortunately that was not reciprocated by the opposition, who then pulled a parliamentary stunt. However, since then, we've had a bit of time to look over the proposed amendments by the member for Lindsay, and I must say, unfortunately for all of us, they are quite poor. In relation to the proposed amendment to the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act 2018, at best, the amendment is completely redundant. The current definition of critical telecommunications asset already captures the infrastructure the amendment is targeted towards. At worst, the amendment would extend the definition of critical telecommunications asset far beyond its intent. The proposed insertion of a telecommunications network that is used to supply an emergency call service is untethered from the concept of carriers and carriage services and does not define what an emergency call service is, and so would potentially capture any system or series of systems.
The Minister will pause. She's talking about the amendments. Just get her to take a seat for a moment so I can hear from the Leader of the Opposition on a point of order.
It's a point of order on relevance, Mr Speaker. The Minister is not answering the question about the penalty specifically, and the Minister needs to answer why she is letting Optus off the hook.
Order. Members on my right, I want to hear from the Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, to the point of order, the Leader of the Opposition knows that in a question where you ask about amendments and votes in the House, and the Minister responds by referring to the amendments that the House voted on, that it's completely relevant to what's asked. The Leader of the Opposition knows that.
I think the Leader of the Opposition was asking about a specific amendment, but the Minister is giving detail about broader amendments, so she can address those as part of the answer. And she's got to remain directly relevant. I can appreciate the Leader would like a specific answer, but if she was talking about another complete topic, it could not be classed as directly relevant. So just make sure, and I noticed at the beginning of her answer she specifically addressed that part of the question. So she has addressed that part of the question about the specific she was asked. Now she's giving further information. So under the standing orders, she's addressed the specific part of the question directly. Now she is being directly relevant, and I'm going to listen carefully with her. She's talking about amendments, and I want to make sure they're directly relevant to what the topic she was asked about. So the Minister in continuation.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I was saying, the impact of that amendment would potentially capture any system or series of systems that carries or is capable of carrying communications by means of guided or unguided electromagnetic energy, which is in any way connected to emergency services calls. It is not clear to me what exactly this is attempting to achieve beyond making the Act confusing.
Order. Order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Petrie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government tackling the environmental challenge of climate change while seizing the economic opportunities of renewable energy? And are there any risks?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Petrie for her question. Indeed, Australians were very clear when they voted for the member for Petrie on the 3rd of May that they wanted action on climate change that both protects our environment, and I must say the member's electorate is particularly pristine there around Redcliffe and around that beautiful part of Queensland, but also that strengthens our economy. And our government is taking precisely that action with our target to reduce emissions by 62 to 70% by 2035. It's a responsible...
Member for Fairfax. I'm not in the mood today for those sorts of interjections. I'm just not. And I don't think the House is either. So we're just going to hold your horses so I can hear the Prime Minister.
It is a responsible target, Mr Speaker. Importantly, it was done under what is the world's best practice. We had the Climate Change Authority, chaired by Mr Keane, who put forward the evidence-based approach so that it is ambitious, but importantly as well, it is achievable. And I must say it was well received, because we also have a practical plan to get us there. Government, industry and Australians all doing their bit, protecting the environment for our children, but also creating good jobs on the way through. Now, as a government, we're investing in the National Reconstruction Fund for new industries, boosting low-emissions manufacturing and industry. We're also getting more renewables in the grid through the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and we're investing in clean fuels for the transport sector. But Australians and Australian businesses are getting behind action too, which is why this announcement was so well received by the business community. Something that upsets those opposite used to talk to the business community. They don't these days. Mr Speaker. Since July 1, of course, as the Minister has proudly informed the House just minutes ago, we're now up to more than 80,000 home batteries being installed. Now, what that's doing, obviously, is storing the energy that comes from our roofs that have the highest per capita rate of solar panels in the world, and making sure that you get the permanent reduction. Now, 94% of ASX 50 companies are committed to net zero. 94%, because they recognise it's good for their business as well as good for the environment.
On my left and the member
now, everyone's doing their bit, except, of course, for those opposite who are busy interjecting. They're the only people who aren't on board with this. They're stuck in the past and they're too busy getting stuck into each other to worry about Australia's national interest.
Before I call the member for Fowler, I'll just do some quick acknowledgements before I give her the call. Pleased to advise the House in the gallery today are participants of the University of Canberra's Pathway to Politics for Women's program with the privilege of meeting before question time, and also in the gallery is a delegation of GPs who are at Parliament House to launch the Health of the Nation report. Welcome to you all. I give the call to the honourable member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, recent media reports state that your government had no involvement in bringing back the ISIS-affiliated group. My community in Fowler, home to large Assyrian, Chaldean and Mandaean and Hasidic communities who were all persecuted and subjected to genocide by the ISIS regime, is rightly terrified. Will your government give my community in Fowler an absolute guarantee that none of the returned ISIS-affiliated women and children will be settled in our community?
Call to the Leader of the House. Order. Members on my left.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. And I thank the member for Fowler for raising the issue in the House. Those opposite have given the impression in the media they were going to, but once they get in here appear for some reason unwilling to raise the issue. If I start with this principle, first of all, as the Prime Minister's made clear, there has been no repatriation. So when the question at the end of that for the member for Fowler refers to the government settling people, the government is not settling people. The government is not involved in settling people. What we have is a situation where we have a number of Australian citizens who made a terrible decision, an absolutely dreadful decision, to go off and join join others who were involved in what has been described as one of the most horrific organisations that the world has seen. And this is not the first time that Australian citizens who made that decision have returned. When Australian citizens seek to return to Australia, they are able to do so. Now, this is not the first. There have been 2 times that there were repatriations, one under this government, one under the previous government. But there have also been repeated occasions where people have returned of their own volition. Those opposite seem to have forgotten the number of people who returned to Australia of their own volition in exactly this way while they were in office. And while the discussion has been about women and children who have recently returned, those who returned under those, and this is in their own words from a question on notice, include some who fought for ISIL, a few who had joined other Islamic extremist groups, others who provided support to ISIL, who returned in exactly this way. And that's referred to as being part of a group of around 40 people in a question on notice that those opposite appear to be wanting to forget.
Order.
But the thing that is consistent throughout all of this, and this is why I'm glad the member for Fowler has raised it, is that our security agencies are constantly engaged. And every conversation that you would expect me as the Minister for Home Affairs would have with those security intelligence agencies about making sure that Australians are safe, you are guaranteed is happening, and our agencies are working with the full professionalism you would expect.
Call to the honourable member for Gellibrand.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What did Treasury's net zero modelling show about the Albanese Labor government's approach to the transformation to cleaner and cheaper energy, and what risks are there in other proposals?
Good question. Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Thanks to the member for Gellibrand for his question, but also for his thoughtful contributions to our climate policy and also to our economic policies more broadly. He knows, and we know, and I think Australians know, that the net zero transformation is a golden economic opportunity for Australia. The shift to cleaner and cheaper energy over time is an opportunity that Australians cannot afford to waste. And the Treasury modelling of our 2035 target makes that really clear. Now, that modelling helped to inform our decision that we took and announced not that long ago, and it also helps Australians understand why those decisions and those targets are so important to our economy and to our future as well, Mr Speaker. Now, Treasury compared 2 orderly scenarios with a disorderly transition and reached 5 key conclusions. Firstly, decisive action and clear targets will make us a big beneficiary of the energy transformation. Secondly, cleaner and cheaper energy will make us more internationally competitive. Thirdly, clear and credible action means more jobs, higher wages and higher living standards. Fourthly, clear targets and an orderly plan gives business the clarity and the certainty that they need to invest with confidence. And lastly, a disorderly transition means fewer jobs, less investment, lower wages and living standards and higher power prices in a smaller economy, Mr Speaker. Now, the only scenario worse for the economy than this disorderly transformation would be to abandon net zero completely, which is what most of those opposite want Australia to do, Mr Speaker. Now, they have found a position which is worse than the worst-case scenario modelled by the Treasury, Mr Speaker. They have found a worse outcome. Our policy and our path to net zero is all about the national economic interest. It's guided by sophisticated Treasury modelling. Their position is driven entirely by coalition internal party politics. This unseemly spat between the far right and the further right, Mr Speaker, over there is driving their climate policies. Now, what it shows once again is that whether it's net zero or the budget or the economy more broadly, they haven't changed a bit. They haven't learned a thing. They are more divided and more decisive than ever. There is not a whiff of economic credibility coming from over there, Mr Speaker, and we know that because in this case they want to smash investor certainty, they want to trash our economy, they want to make people worse off, all in the service of their extreme, hard-right, internal coalition politics.
The call to the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. Minister, when you were advised of a 000 outage that your department had no idea about, why didn't your office raise it with your department immediately? Was it because you were planning your well-publicised trip to a pub in New York?
Leader of the House.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I refer to your earlier instruction that all references to you are in fact references to the Speaker. There were 5 violations of that in the 30 seconds of that question.
Order. Yep. I want to hear from the manager.
The manager of government business knows that those violations that he refers to are not violations. It's your office. There's no. You could say the minister 100 times if you wanted to, but it's not a violation to say your. She did not say you repeatedly. That's what the standing order refers to. Your is a perfectly fine reference in this regard. Your office or your. What would you like? Like, what's the problem?
All right. Let's all agree. Order. Let's all agree that we're just going to follow the standing orders. The Shadow Minister was within the standing orders just to help the House take the you out of it, and where you can, take the you're out of it as well. Order. We're just we've got to. It's not a laughing matter. I didn't raise it for fun. I raised it because I wanted a level of respect and dignity in the House. So just moving forward, just for everyone. It's not about me, it's about the office that I hold. So I'm just asking everyone just to follow. It would be great for help us have the questions within order, and I'll give the call to the Minister for Communications.
I thank the member for Lindsay for her question. As is a matter of public record, I became aware of the major Optus outage on the 19th of September at approximately 4:30 p.m. after my office was contacted by Optus. Through my office, I received briefings and information following the Optus press conference. Overnight, I made arrangements to delay my trip to gather information and inform premiers and the Australian public, which I did at a press conference on Saturday. And we can agree this is a tragic circumstance. People have lost loved ones, and that hardens my resolve. My department, my office, will pursue this with absolute rigour. And you have every right to raise these questions, but I am not led by the opposition. I am led by Australians, by telco customers, and by ensuring that this system is as safe as it possibly can be, and ensuring that all telcos, including Optus, treat this as too important to fail.
Yeah. Call to the honourable member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. Minister, how has the Albanese Labor government's $1.1 billion commitment to building a sustainable fuels industry in Australia helped support net zero by 2050? And what other approaches, Minister, is government being asked to consider which would harm the development of this new critical industry?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Lingiari for the question and her support for this important and historic investment in our regional communities. The Albanese Labor government is committed to growing an Australian low-carbon liquid fuels industry here on our soil. That will support our farmers, it will create jobs and it will provide a sustainable future for our transport industries. Sustainable fuels have an absolutely essential role to play in those hard-to-abate sectors of aviation and in heavy haulage. It is why we have committed $1.1 billion to the Cleaner Fuels program to build a new low-carbon liquid fuel industry here in Australia. It is a fantastic opportunity for regional Australia, from growers to refineries, creating new income streams for farmers and new job opportunities for workers. And I am so pleased to see how our plan to create a new sustainable fuels industry has been welcomed by so many, like the National Farmers Federation, who said this isn't just about cleaner fuels, it's about creating jobs, diversifying farm businesses and ensuring our regions remain at the forefront of Australia's transition to net zero. The Tourism and Transport Forum applauds this landmark investment, which brings government and industry together to position Australia as a global leader in sustainable aviation, cruise and transport fuels. And Ampol, who said this announcement is an important step forward in establishing a market for Australian-produced low-carbon liquid fuels, paving the way for a new industry and creating jobs across the country. So those that support our plan of $1.1 billion investing in low-carbon liquid fuels, our farmers, our tourism operators, our transport sector and, of course, our energy providers as well. But you know who doesn't support this plan? It is those opposite. Absolutely and utterly disappointing. No support for low-carbon liquid fuels and the transition that is happening across the world and the opportunities that that provides in regional Australia. The Coalition would rather continue tearing themselves apart over net zero than support new jobs and new industries in our region, which will ensure the future sustainability of jobs in those regions, many areas of which have seen a declining population and declining jobs. These provide new opportunities for Australians to be able to continue to live, to work and to gain an income, both from agriculture but also from the refineries and the jobs that are there. On this side of the chamber, we support our regional communities, we support those jobs in those regional communities, and our Future Made in Australia plan will deliver just that for our regions.
The call to the honourable member for Mallee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. A chain of emails revealing the minister's personal office's knowledge of the escalating 000 outage crisis on the 18th of September included alerting the minister's office to the fact that, quote, welfare checks will be made, end quote. Did the minister take any actions to satisfy herself that those welfare checks were being conducted or the well-being of those impacted, for example by phoning to apologise to affected people and their families?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Mallee for her question. The information that Optus provided to my office on the 18th of September was that there had been a minor outage, it affected 10 calls, that it had been resolved and, most importantly, that there were no adverse impacts on any person. My office sought assurance that ACMA had been informed, ensuring that the regulator was investigating that incident, and ACMA has publicly confirmed that they were informed.
We call to the honourable member for Bonner.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister, representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering credible action on climate change, and why is this important to the region?
Call to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Defence and the Minister representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Well, I thank the member for her question. The entry point for Australia's engagement with the countries of the Pacific is by our nation's meaningful action on climate change through a credible pathway to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. 3 of the 4 coral atoll nations in the world are in the Pacific: Kiribati, Tuvalu and the Marshall Islands, and the 4th, the Maldives, is in another region of strategic importance to us, the Northeast Indian Ocean. These countries occupy thin strips of land, and their people have an understandable deep connection to the sea. The sea is their source of food and nourishment, their place of recreation where they practice culture. In short, the sea has been their source of security. But with the effects of climate change, with rising sea levels which threaten to engulf their nations, with more frequent storm surges which are fouling their water lenses, suddenly the sea is a source of threat. And it is hard to describe how viscerally this impacts the peoples of the Pacific, their national psyche and their very way of life. They are left to wonder whether their towns and villages will be livable, and governments are faced with decisions which for us would be unimaginable. And so part of our responsibility is to help the Pacific tell its climate change story to the world. Now, back in 2011, I was honoured to be able to take then Secretary-General of the United Nations Ban Ki-moon to Kiribati, where we stood in a kitchen and literally watched the sea lap up against the front door. And today, our government's bid to host COP31 next year is an incredible opportunity to tell the story of the Pacific and indeed all small island states around the globe in a way which places it front and centre on the world stage. And how different is that to what we saw from those opposite? Because when they were in government, the Pacific Island Forum was a meeting where Australia had absolutely nothing to say, and the only time they spoke about this issue is when they made jokes at the expense of the Pacific. Now, meaningful action on climate change is central to our economic prosperity, and to be clear, that is the core driver of our government's policies. But at the same time, meaningful action on climate change is at the heart of Australia's standing within our region and within our world, and that in turn is fundamental to our nation's security.
The call to the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. Noting the minister's determination to hold Optus to account, why did the minister express confusion about the opposition's amendment to double the maximum penalty for getting things so badly wrong on behalf of Australians dialling 000? Will the minister review her decision and act to double this penalty as the opposition has suggested? Thank you.
Call to the Minister for Communications.
I thank the Shadow Minister for Communication for her question. I'm sure as the Shadow Minister for Communication she would recall that a few sitting weeks ago we introduced the Enhancing Consumer Safeguards legislation to this place, where we enhanced penalties for telcos doing the wrong thing by 40 times. So penalties are now up to $10 million and more in particular situations. So I believe, and I believe with her support, this House is already considering penalties. And I offer, in good faith, if that is a live issue for you, given this bill is before the House, we can continue to work on penalties where it is already tabled in the House. I'm done.
I think the minister's concluded, but I'll hear from the manager.
Well, the minister, the bill is not before the House. The bill has passed the House, so the bill's already passed. We asked would she review her decision.
That's not a,
well, the Prime Minister just offered
that's not a point.
He just asked us across the table.
That's not a point of order.
We're confused about government policy.
Resume your seat. resume your seat. Yeah. Order. The minister's concluded her answer. The manager made a point of order, a statement to the House. So we're just going to get the House to settle, come to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Aston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Skills and Training. How is the Albanese Labor government ensuring Australians, particularly apprentices, can make the most of the opportunities in the clean energy sector? Are they aware of any alternatives?
Call to the Minister for Skills and Training.
Thanks, Speaker, and I thank my friend, the member for Aston, for her question. Like all of us on this side of the House, she understands how critical it is that Australia makes the most of the opportunities of net zero, and in particular the opportunities to upskill and work in the clean energy economy. The Albanese government has had a clear focus on delivering opportunities for Australians, for communities and for the economy, on how we can assure that Australians in every corner of the country can access skills they want for jobs we need in our growing clean energy sector. And of course this includes our fantastic new energy apprenticeship programs, a program which has already seen more than 13,000 people pick up the tools and begin their path to become a tradie in new energy, with the help of $10,000 incentive payments, $10,000 over the course of their apprenticeship, to help with the cost of living now and to help with completing their qualifications. And these thousands of tradies will ensure our renewable energy infrastructure can be built, maintained and sustained to service Australia well into the future in automotive trades, in plumbing and in electrical trades, training Australians to build our future. And so far, Speaker, the program has seen a retention rate at the 12-month mark of 85%. 85%. Making a real difference and opening doors of opportunity to pre-apprenticeship students like Jazz and Syed, who I met in Box Hill TAFE with the member for Menzies, benefiting from free TAFE. Now, and in communities like Gippsland, where I met Siobhan, a qualified electrician blazing a trail for others in Gippsland, member for Gippsland. Now, we know that the Leader of the Opposition thinks if you don't pay for something, you don't value it. That's her track record on free TAFE. But fortunately, she does back net zero by 2050. Or she did. She did. The Leader of the Opposition said only a few years ago, and I quote, "I think the net zero by 2050 aim is perfect." Perfect, she said, but not to those sitting beside her. Because let's not forget the Coalition's first bill of this term was to abandon net zero. That's not perfect. While our government is delivering opportunities for Australians in clean energy, they're fighting amongst themselves about whether or not to even believe in climate change. And let's be clear about this. Abandoning climate action isn't just reckless for our economy. It's reckless for our environment and it's reckless for jobs. It means slamming the jaws shut for people like Jazz, Syed and Siobhan. But in place of division, dysfunctional and denial over there, the Albanese government will continue to deliver clean energy skills Australians need, clean energy jobs Australians want and the clean energy transition that will set Australia up for the future.
Call to the honourable member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health and Ageing. Minister, Australian medical researchers and universities are struggling to survive while your government is releasing less than half of what it could spend from the Medical Research Futures Fund. The Parliamentary Budget Office says that you could spend up to $1.4 billion a year while still keeping $24 billion in a fund which was never intended to hold more than $20 billion. Why won't you release taxpayers' money for the purpose for which it's been set aside?
Call to the Minister for Health and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. As a paediatric neurologist and very esteemed researcher, she understands this area very well and has been a strong contributor to a debate about the future of health medical research that I'll come to, that includes the question of disbursements from the MRFF, but goes more broadly than that. As the member knows, as most in this House know, the MRFF was set up about a decade ago not just to add more money to our health and medical research sector from government, but also to take a slightly different approach, not only to have funding flow essentially bottom-up from investigator-initiated applications to the NHMRC, but to allow us as a country to set out particular priorities that would then be funded through a priority-driven fund through the MRFF. And it means that we're now funding about more than $1.5 billion of medical research, health and medical research projects every year. When I set up the review that set the MRFF in motion, that was about $650 million. So more than double the amount of funding going in. $850 million, the member looks confused, $850 million from the MREA, the endowment account from the NHMRC, and about $650 million per year from the MRFF. As the member knows, $650 million has been the annual disbursement from the MRFF for some years now. As the member also knows, the Departments of Treasury and Finance conducted its statutory review after 10 years of the MRFF. That review, I think, has been published over the last couple of weeks and has raised a number of issues around the funding from the MRFF, including the annual disbursement amount. More broadly than that, again, as the member knows, we are in the process of receiving a national strategy for health and medical research that's been prepared by Rosemary Huxtable, a very esteemed former public servant. This has been a big ask from the health and medical research sector to have an overarching national strategy. Ms Huxtable has released a draft strategy that's out for consultation now. I encourage the member and other interested members to engage with that. We've asked Ms Huxtable to deliver the final strategy to government by the end of the year, and that strategy, obviously along with pieces of work like the 10-year review commissioned or delivered by the Departments of Treasury and Finance, will guide the government's future thinking.
Call to the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government working with the Queensland government to protect jobs in regional Queensland and strengthen Australia's copper capability?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Leichhardt for his question. And today, our government has announced a joint investment with the Queensland government in Glencore's Mount Isa copper smelter and Townsville refinery. Support will be jointly provided to ensure more than 600 direct jobs remain ongoing, with an additional 500 jobs at the nearby Phosphate Hill facility. Glencore's Mount Isa smelter reinforces Australia's position as a key global supplier of copper. And in this century, part of the transition to clean energy requires a greater use of copper. It is used in everything from electric vehicles to make sure as a conductor that batteries, everything that will power the globe in the 21st century just about has copper in it. So this is a valuable resource that we can't afford to lose. It's important to Queensland and it's important to the nation. Its jobs, its industry capability and its economic power. And I thank Premier Crisafulli for the constructive engagement that we have had over recent weeks to be able to deliver this announcement. The investment announced today, though, has been made contingent on Glencore taking their share of responsibility as well. This includes conducting a transformation study, putting in the work to bring the facility into the modern day, evaluating the end-to-end copper value chain in the region so that Mount Isa and Australia continue to benefit from a sustainable and long-term industry. And both the Commonwealth and the Queensland Government will support Glencore in that evaluation process. Glencore needs to back Mount Isa just as Mount Isa has backed Glencore, and both the Premier and myself are very clear about that with the company. It is a highly profitable company, delivering billions in dividends to shareholders this year alone. Future opportunities for industry mean that companies must invest to meet those opportunities. And there, of course, at Mount Isa, as the member for Kennedy has reminded the House on a number of occasions, there are third-generation workers at the Mount Isa facility. Our government wants there to be a fourth and fifth generation. I've met workers there in many visits that I've had to Mount Isa, and it's quite clear that if that facility closed, then that would have a devastating impact on that community and on that important town in North Queensland. We say to those workers at that facility, we're going to look after your jobs. We want to make sure that your children can have a good job too. That is what we're determined to do. That's what today's announcement will deliver. Once again, this government backing jobs, backing industry, making sure we also back regional Queensland.
Order. Call to the honourable member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. I refer to the Minister's previous answer where she refused to address whether welfare checks had been conducted. It is an open secret in the press gallery that Labor MPs are complaining to journalists the Minister continually fails to show any compassion for victims. Today, secret emails have revealed the Minister's office was aware of—
Order. 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 I can't hear the question. Order. I heard backgrounding, but I want to know what the context was. So I'm going to ask the member, Lindsay, out of respect, to begin her question again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
And she'll be heard in silence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I refer to the Minister's previous answer, where she refused to address whether welfare checks had been conducted. It is an open secret in the press gallery that Labor MPs are complaining to journalists the Minister continually fails to show any compassion for victims. Today, secret emails have revealed the Minister's office was aware of this crisis 24 hours before the time which the Minister told the House she found out. Yesterday, the Minister refused to apologise for this failure. Will the Minister finally now apologise to victims and their families?
Order. Just remind government members, do not test me on time questions, otherwise it will apply to ministers as well. There's nothing more that annoys me when someone yells out the issue of time. If people want me to go down the path of exactly strict limits, we'll do it, which means questions will be ruled out and ministers will be sat down. I'm asking everyone to respect that. The Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I said in an earlier answer, the information that Optus provided to my office on the 18th of September was that there had been a minor outage. It affected 10 calls, that it had been resolved, and most importantly, that there were no adverse impacts on any person. With respect to the more catastrophic outage that affected 631 calls and potentially with links to 3 deaths, potentially 4 deaths as we found out on Saturday, I inquired as to correct process about dealing with families in this situation. I was advised that emergency services is the correct and proper agency that we use to reach out, so that's what happened. I also spoke to the Premiers of South Australia, of Western Australia and the Chief Minister of the NT, numerous other people across that weekend as we all worked on our collective response. Of course, I would absolutely meet with affected families if that's what they wished. I am respecting their space. There are, of course, many sensitivities here, and I'm not going to make their lives harder by politicising their grief in this place, as you have now done 2 days in a row.
Call to the honourable member for Jagga Jagga.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to back first home buyers and build more homes? What is standing in the way?
Call to the Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness, the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I really want to thank the fantastic member for Jagga for her question. And I know, like everyone on this side of the chamber, she is so excited that our government has opened up a realistic pathway for tens of thousands of more young people every year to get into the dream of home ownership in our great country. Now, in her electorate already, about 500 people have taken up the opportunity of getting into home ownership through our 5% deposit scheme. What I hope to see is many more over the coming 3 years, and they will have their local member of parliament to thank for that. Now, Speaker, our government understands that housing is a life-defining challenge for many people around our country, and that's why we are taking our government on a journey, Speaker, from complete negligence and ignorance about the housing crisis that was demonstrated by those opposite over 9 years into building the boldest and most ambitious housing agenda that our country has had at the Commonwealth level for 70 years, Speaker. Now, of course, we know that the answer to our housing crisis ultimately is that we've got to build more homes more quickly, and that's why the majority of our government's $43 billion housing agenda is focused on building, building, building. And, Speaker, we're seeing real progress on this. You've heard me say to the parliament before that we've got new housing starts up 17% on where they were a year ago. Speaker, when we took office from those opposite and their shambolic dealings with housing, construction costs were rising at an historic 17%. They're now rising below inflation, Speaker. We're supporting modern methods of construction. We're training more tradies. Tens of thousands have gone through fee-free TAFE with our government support. And, Speaker, perhaps most importantly of all, we're doing something that the Commonwealth has not done at scale since the post-war period, and that is we are building tens of thousands of homes, 55,000 social and affordable homes for Australians in need. Now, Speaker, the opposition's approach to our agenda is, it defies any sensible word, Speaker, and I want to point to the reaction to the 5% deposit scheme. Now, this expansion is genuinely going to make meaningful shifts for thousands of young people around our country who are desperate to get into their own home, who need and deserve our government support. But the Shadow Housing Minister is particularly opposed to this expansion of home ownership. He's called it bizarre and ridiculous, and he said that this policy will help the children of billionaires get into their own home. Speaker, how absolutely out of touch do you need to be to make a foolish statement like that, as if the children of billionaires are borrowing 95% loans to buy a two-bedroom home in the member for Jagga's electorate? It's an insult to the 180,000 people who have already used this program and the thousands more who will get into it. Speaker, they did nothing when they were in opposition, spent 3 years trying to hold our government up from doing really important work. We are undeterred. We've got $43 billion on the table to build more homes, help renters get a better deal and, yes, get more Australians into home ownership.
Call to the member for McKellar.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Health and Aged Care. The former Director-General of the American Centre for Disease Control, Dr. Susan Menares, testified that she was illegally sacked from the role by US Secretary for Health for refusing to fire top scientists at the agency or to pre-approve changes to vaccine advice without evaluating the evidence. In her place, the Health Secretary's own deputy has been inserted into the role. Minister, will the Australian CDC be safeguarded from political interference by ensuring that its Director-General must be appointed from a shortlist determined by an independent selection panel?
Call to the Minister for Health and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thanks, Speaker, and thank you to the member for her question, her engagement about this really important reform. As the member knows, as many in this House know, the lack of a single trusted source of advice and data was one of the very significant restrictions we had in our pandemic preparedness and our pandemic response. That was the view of many public health organisations. It was the first conclusion of the independent COVID inquiry, and that is why we're currently debating legislation to introduce an independent CDC. It's supported by all state and territory governments, it's supported by every public health organisation I'm aware of. It's supported by many members in this House. I'm not sure whether it's supported by the opposition. They indicated at the last election they would not proceed with this, but it's an important debate for this parliament to continue to have. The CDC will be an independent agency that operates separately from the Department of Health. The Director-General of the CDC is a very important role, and many of its arrangements, its powers and functions are set out in the bill that's currently being debated by the House. It's very important the Director-General perform his or her functions at arm's length from the government. They will not be subject to direction from the Secretary of my department or from the Minister or anyone else for that matter. There are also, importantly, to the member's question, very limited provisions allowing the termination of the Director-General of the CDC, and they are for misbehaviour or an inability to perform their duties due to physical or mental incapacity. Importantly, that person cannot be terminated for providing advice that the government of the day does not agree with. As to the appointment, the Minister for Health, in this case, must be satisfied that the Director-General holds appropriate expertise, qualifications or experience in public health matters prior to their appointment, and the process of appointment will reflect the government's well-understood merit and transparency policy, and that involves a selection being put together, which in this case will probably involve the Secretary of my department, along with a nominee of the Public Service Commission and other potential representatives. They would undertake an interview process after advertisement. They would then provide a shortlist with a report on every shortlisted candidate to the Minister for the Minister's consideration and then the decision of the government in the usual way. I'm very confident that that provides a level of independence and assurance for the community that this person occupying a very important role in this new agency will have the appropriate qualifications and experience and the appropriate protections and independence from political interference.
Yeah. Give the call to the honourable member for Sturt.
Yeah. Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. What action is the Albanese Labor government taking to address bullying in schools and to make our schools safer for all Australian children?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my friend the member for Sturt for her question. She understands this in a very personal and painful way that she so powerfully explained to all of us in her first speech to this place. Mr Speaker, bullying isn't just a bit of push and shove in the playground or stealing lunch money. It's a lot more awful and insidious than that. And sometimes it can leave invisible scars that never heal. Today it can follow you all the way home after school. The internet means that you can be bullied now at any time, day or night, and anyone can see it. And AI, artificial intelligence, makes it even worse. We've seen too many examples of that over the last few months, where photos of students or teachers are cut and cropped onto naked bodies. And that sort of bullying and harassment can sometimes lead to teachers leaving the job that they love, or in the worst and most heartbreaking examples, young people taking their own life. You can understand then why so many mothers and fathers around the country are so worried. This is a serious problem, and it's getting worse. 1 in 4 students tell us that they've been bullied at school in the last few weeks. 1 in 2 say they've been bullied online. 13% say that online bullying involved someone telling them that they should die. Complaints about online bullying to the eSafety Commissioner have increased by 450% in the last 5 years. It's one of the reasons why we're implementing the social media ban for children under the age of 16. It's being led by my friend the Minister for Communications. That starts in a few weeks. It's also why the Prime Minister commissioned an anti-bullying rapid review earlier this year. That work is being led by Dr Charlotte Keating, a clinical psychologist, and Professor Joe Robinson AM, Head of Suicide Prevention Research at Orygen. And over the last few months they've received more than 1,700 submissions from mums and dads and teachers and students. They've also met with students and teachers and with the mothers and fathers who've lost their children because of this. Next week they will present their recommendations to education ministers and their proposed national standard on bullying in schools. In advance of that, can I thank them for the work that they have done. This is hard work and it's getting harder. Can't be naive and think that anything we do here is going to stop bullying in all its forms, or that bullying just happens at school. Of course it doesn't. but it does happen at schools, and schools are a place where we can act to help to keep our children safe. And this report will help us provide a way to do that.
The call to the honourable member for Mallee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. As the Minister earlier said, people have died. Instead of coming clean about what the Minister and her office knew and when, the Minister chose to mislead the public and the House to protect herself. In light of evidence tabled at Senate estimates today, why doesn't the Minister just say sorry?
The member's going to resume his seat so I can hear from the Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, in terms of questions, when you go through the list in Standing Order 100D of things that a question must not contain, this has already got most of them. Separate to that, there's an assertion made in the question that can only be made by direct motion and cannot be used in that way.
Yeah, on the point of order.
No, the assertion that the Leader Manager is referring to is actually deliberately misleading. She did not use that phrase.
Leader of the House.
If the inference was being made in the form in which the Manager of Opposition Business just put, the question wouldn't have concluded with seeking an apology.
Yeah, look, I think we can find a way through this without the back and forth. Yeah, we just... Order, just resume your seat. Yeah. The Minister for the Environment, I appreciate her assistance, but I think I've got this. Look, there was a lot of problems with that question, just in terms of the way it was phrased, just in terms of the direct reference and inference. If we could just take out some of those inferences, and Standing Order D, and I want to read it out so that so the whole House know. Questions must not contain statements of facts or names of persons unless they can be authenticated. Arguments, inferences, imputations, insults, ironical expressions or hypothetical matter. So it did contain a lot of those things in it. So if the member for Mallee could just tone that question down, make it factual, make it a little less personal, she can still get her point across and still make sure the House knows what she's asking the Minister of. But I'm asking her to work with me on that for the benefit of the House. She has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. People have died. Instead of coming clean about what the Minister or her office knew and when, the Minister chose not to accept responsibility. In light of evidence tabled at Senate estimates today, why doesn't the Minister just say sorry?
The Minister has the call.
Thank you for the question. All of the matters that have been raised today are a matter of public record and have been a matter of public record for more than 2 weeks. They were declared by the regulator, Nerita O'Loughlin, and myself at a press conference. That press conference transcript is available on my website. It has been made available for more than 2 weeks. This issue is not about emails. Hopefully we can all agree about that. This is fundamentally about Optus's failure to manage its network and to meet its legal obligations.
Order.
My job as Minister is to improve this system, to work for Australians and to deliver maximum safety and public confidence.
Yeah. Call to the honourable member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government making medicines cheaper for all Australians? How are new medicines being listed on the PBS making new treatments available for Australians with serious illnesses?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing and the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Bullwinkle. Following the member for Cooper and the member for Indi, she is the 10th nurse elected to this parliament and very appropriately represents an electorate named after the most famous nurse we have in Australia, Vivian Bullwinkle. I first met the member for Bullwinkle when she was presenting a paper at a global cancer conference about the benefits to patients of receiving chemotherapy in home as part of her doctorate of nursing. This is a member, Mr Speaker, who deeply understands the importance of a stronger Medicare and cheaper medicines. She also knows, Mr Speaker, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Today and every other day on average, around 60 Australian women are told that they have breast cancer. Although the overall survival rate in this country is one of the world's best, it's much lower if you're told that you have metastatic breast cancer or cancer that has spread to other parts of the body. Only about 1 in 3 of those women will survive more than 5 years, Mr Speaker. Last week we listed on the PBS a new drug that gives new hope to those women who've received a diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer. TrueCap will benefit as many as 3,000 patients every year, Mr Speaker, women with HR-positive, HER2-negative, advanced or metastatic breast cancer, a type that accounts for as much as 70% of all breast cancer cases. And without a listing on the PBS, Mr Speaker, patients would have to pay around $100,000 for a course of treatment of this drug. And that is the magic of the PBS, providing access for Australian patients to the world's best medicines at affordable prices, Mr Speaker. And we're making those PBS medicines even cheaper. The first 4 waves of our cheaper medicines policies, Mr Speaker, have already saved Australian patients more than $1.5 billion in payments at the pharmacy counter, Mr Speaker, a huge amount. But there are more savings to come. This year we froze the price of PBS scripts for Australia's millions of pensioners, not just for this year, but for the rest of the decade, Mr Speaker. And from the 1st of January next year, the maximum price of a PBS script for Australia's general patients will be cut to just $25, the same price it was way back in 2004, more than 20 years ago, Mr Speaker. Now, obviously, it goes without saying, all of this is terrific for the hip pocket, Mr Speaker, but it's also good for your health, helping Australians afford the medicines and the health care that their doctors have said are important for their health, creating a stronger Medicare, Mr Speaker, and a healthier Australia.
Yeah. Call to the honourable member for Kennedy.
Prime Minister, the grand final is over. Queensland won. Sorry about that. Season's over. 1,000 North Queensland Rugby League players are bored, and you know PM, an idle mind, is the devil's workshop. In some of the last jungles left on Earth, 3 million pigs are destroying our fauna and flora. Please give the boys back their rifles and licensed, I emphasise, licensed access to national parks. Prime Minister, you'll rescue the now doomed cassowary and the North Queensland turtle. Give the boys back their air rifles. You may even eliminate some of the 2,000 million toads in North Queensland. Prime Minister, too late for the Rabbitohs. Sorry. And don't worry about the pests in this place. Please, would you worry about the pests in North Queensland?
Yes, the manager on a point of order.
Well, I think, Speaker, you know my point of order already. You just finished reading Standing Order 100D, which says questions may not contain arguments, inferences, imputations, insults, ironical expressions, or hypothetical matter.
Well, the question was about pest management at the end. The actual question was about pest management, so it's completely within order. And the difference between the questions, if you want to get into it, Manager, is that the member for Kennedy wasn't specifying any person. He didn't mention any person. That's the difference. So there's a difference in the previous question when it's about a person. That's an important point to make to the House. No way, member for Kennedy. No chance. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I am concerned about pests, Mr Speaker. I assure the House of that. And I know that this is a really serious issue around our national parks and around regional, not just regional Queensland, but right around the country. I visited some time ago, the Northern Territory, with the Cattlemen's Association, looking at the issue of feral pigs there is just devastating the country and having a real impact on our wildlife, and therefore it is something that we do take seriously. I will ask the Minister for Agriculture, though, to supplement, although I will say to the member for Kennedy that as a South Sydney supporter, we've been 43 years in a drought, and we always have hope. We always have hope, and we have something that those on this side of the House have in abundance. It's called loyalty.
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Prime Minister for passing that question through from the member for Kennedy. Can I say to the member for Kennedy, I do appreciate, and we've had many discussions in person about his love of the land in Queensland and his genuine commitment to improving land management in Queensland and his concern for invasive species, because there's no doubt they are having a serious impact in Queensland and elsewhere around the country. Which is why, of course, since coming to government, we have strengthened our biosecurity system, because we do know that we want to stop more pests and disease from getting into the country, and we've now invested around $2 billion in doing that. Can I say that we also work closely with states and territories, and as the member for Kennedy would be aware, it is the responsibility of those respective states and territories to do the invasive species management on the ground in those states where the invasive species are. But can I say, in terms of that, we have in the past, the former federal government offered some funding in relation to the prickly acacia, which I understand he's concerned about. And in terms of the feral pigs, we have actually provided funding to Australian Pork to host the National Feral Pig Management Coordinator, which is a program that we actually just announced that we will extend, so that it can better coordinate with the states and territories about how they can manage on the ground the feral pig population across the country. And we have invested $3.87 million in that, and it's a national feral pig action plan that will run through to 2031. So we are investing with the states and territories in making sure that we can manage some of these feral species around the country, and we are doing it with feral pigs and a whole range of other species, but it is primarily the responsibility of the states and territories, and our job, of course, is the biosecurity, which we're investing more in, and we've put more dogs on the beat when it comes to our biosecurity detector dogs as well.
Call to the member for Richmond.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to prepare communities, particularly in regional Australia, for more intense natural disasters as a result of climate change? And what other approaches has the government been asked to consider?
Call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Richmond for her question. She understands the impact of climate change on her regional communities, and I was with her in Murwillumbah, where I had the privilege of meeting with local farmers, business owners and community members who understand the need for action on climate change now and investment, in particular, in disaster resilience. I thank her for her work in advocating for disaster-affected communities. We know natural disasters are increasing in frequency and ferocity. The National Climate Risk Assessment highlighted that Australia will experience climate hazards like floods, cyclones, heat waves, droughts and bushfires more frequently, more severely and often at the same time. It finds that no Australian community will be immune from climate risks. And those opposite are shaking their head, and I don't know why. In 24-25, there were 70 declared natural disasters, impacting more than 200 local councils across the country, and some of them more than one disaster. It is absolutely gobsmacking to sit there and shake your head and say this isn't impacting communities that you represent. Order. It highlights the importance of taking action to help mitigate the impacts on communities. And this government is taking action. We have created the National Emergency Management Agency. We have established the Disaster Ready Fund, where we're investing $1 billion in disaster mitigation over 5 years with matching funding from other levels of government. We have increased funding for aerial capability to respond to fires.
to floods and to other severe weather events. We've built the first ever national emergency stockpile to supplement jurisdictions' own resources of emergency housing, water purification and other necessities when disasters strike. We're funding the Disaster Relief Australia, a veteran-run volunteer organisation to provide boots on the ground when it comes to clean-up and to recovery. We are taking action to mitigate risks and to ensure communities are more resilient ahead of the next natural disaster. While those opposite continue to debate whether they believe in climate change or not, we are taking action. While those opposite continue to fight the climate wars amongst themselves because the rest of us are getting on with the job.
Yes, OK. Order. The minister may pause. Order. Yep. It's OK. Manager of Opposition Business on point of order.
Well, the Minister on Relevance was not asked about this. The Minister was asked about the preparations she's making, and she's addressing matters that are not in the matters she was asked about.
The question, before I hear, is about what other measures have the government been asked to consider. So, as long as she's asking and being relevant to the House about what the other measures are, she needs to relate it to the question, because the manager is correct. She wasn't asked about alternative policies or approaches. She was asked about what other measures the government has been asked to consider. So I'm going to get her to specify to the House the measures that she was asked about.
We on this side of the House don't need to fight climate wars. On this side of the House, we are taking action to help communities when they need it most. We are helping communities through preparedness, through infrastructure investment. We are taking action to keep Australians safe when natural disasters strike. I'm proud to be part of a government that takes climate change seriously, is taking decisive action to prevent the worst of what we know is coming for Australians during high-risk weather season. Building resilience in the face of disasters is a priority for this Labor government. We only wish it was for those on that side of the House.
Yep.
My question is to the Minister for Communications.
Give the call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. As a self-described new minister, over the last 2 days, the minister has informed this House it is not appropriate for the minister to express empathy. The email that alerted the minister's office to the escalating crisis needed no response from the minister or her office, and the Coalition's request to double the penalty to telcos who let Australians down is confusing. When will the minister step up and take responsibility and restore trust in the 000 network for Australians?
Order. Yeah. Before I call the minister, look, I want to make all questions relevant, but simply give opinions. It would help the House if any member, including the Leader of the Opposition, could perhaps give a quote or read something from Hansard or a newspaper article, rather than just giving an opinion about what you think someone has said or hasn't said. Because I don't have every single word that anyone has said in the whole House, so it's very hard for me then to know exactly what is accurate or not. So trying to work with everyone here. So perhaps moving forward for the rest of the week, if people could just be a little bit more accurate with their questions in terms of what has been said, that would be greatly, I think, for all members and also ministers to be accurate with their responses as well. Hope everyone gets the point. Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you to the Leader of the Opposition for her question to deal with various elements of it with respect to penalties. Like I said in my earlier answer, there is a bill before the House, the Enhancing Consumer Safeguards Bill. It's an amendment to the Telecommunications Act. It was introduced on the 28th of August. It was debated on the 4th of September. The Shadow Minister for Communications herself debated this bill on the 4th of September.
The member for Lindsay has the MPI. She won't be here for it if she continues interjecting, which means we won't have the debate. The Minister has the call.
The Shadow Minister for Communications spoke on this bill about enhancing consumer safeguards on the 4th of September. She spoke about penalties on the 4th of September. She spoke about her support for the increase to penalties, up to $10 million, and in some particular cases even more than that. She spoke in support of that work. So I would contend, Mr Speaker, it is confusing, having done that on the 4th of September, to now bring an amendment to a different bill and object to us not supporting that amendment because we have already done this work, which she has already supported in this place. Nonetheless,
Order, members on my left. The member for Gippsland is warned.
Nonetheless, Mr Speaker, we can all agree, surely, that what happened in September was not good enough. And the Albanese government will always work to protect Australians, and we will always work to hold those who fail to deliver on their obligations to full account. There are several investigations underway now to this effect. If a telco fails Australians, like Optus did, they will face real and serious consequences. Real and serious consequences, Mr Speaker. There are no excuses. Telcos must deliver resilient and reliable 000 services. That is their obligation under the law, and that is the work we will continue to do on this side of the House to hold them to account.
Yeah. Give the call to the member for Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government taking action to support Australia's local pubs, sporting clubs and RSLs and the Australians who gather and celebrate in these venues?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Moore for his question. I'm reminded of his fantastic first speech in this place where he spoke about his background as a publican and the work that he did in engaging with people and how it brought him into being motivated to go into public life to represent the people that he used to serve across the bar. He's now serving across his electorate and doing a fantastic job. And today we introduced legislation cementing our 2-year freeze to the draft beer excise. The first time this has happened in 40 years. 40 years, that's a long time between drinks, Mr Speaker. And as a local member, of course, with so many terrific small breweries in my electorate, I know what this means for brewers, for publicans and for, indeed, most importantly, for their customers, people who enjoy the odd beer. Those local pubs, sporting clubs and RSLs are community focal points. They're places where we gather. And increasingly, as society becomes with smaller families and people wanting to interact and have that social interaction face-to-face, these venues are really important in binding our community together. And indeed, if you go into any of your local pubs or clubs, they'll be the people who are sponsoring the local rugby league team or the local AFL team or the local netball team, the people who are really contributing and putting back. Having barbecues at the pubs to raise money for funds and for charities as well, making an enormous difference. 10,000 hospitality venues will benefit from this freeze, including, of course, overwhelmingly, they are small businesses run by mums and dads, people who pitch in and work really hard on a day-to-day basis. And that's why this freeze is a good thing. But it's also a part of our cost of living measures, together with the other measures that we've put in place, the cheaper medicines, the cheaper batteries that are in place, the other measures to provide that cost of living support to make a real difference for people to be able to get by. And of course, when Australians now raise a glass, they know that the Australian government won't be raising the price at the same time, something that they've campaigned on for a long period of time, something that is good news for Australian beer drinkers, good news for Australian small business, good news for Australian pubs and clubs, and good news for you, Mr Speaker, that on that note I will ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.